Welcome to The Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with the top stories in the global economy. Today's magazine, Franco-Israeli trade slowly grows following Hollande visit. And ancient milling still has appeal in Lebanon. First, to look at the headlines. Twitter's user growth slowed in its first quarter as a public company, though its revenue more than doubled. The number of worldwide users grew by a mere 9 million when Twitter went public, suggesting only modest growth. Twitter's loss for the year widened to $645 million from $79 million in 2012, despite revenues doubling to $664 million. Advertising brought in $220 million in the fourth quarter, an increase of 121% year over year, with mobile accounting for more than 75% of the total. Twitter shares skidded more than 17% to $54.16 following the earnings release. The European Commission accepted Google's latest proposal addressing complaints it abuses its dominant position in the internet search market. Google agreed to reserve space near the top of its European search pages for competitors to serve specialized search results. In return, Google avoids a formal probe by EU regulators and a potential fine of 10% of its global annual revenue. The deal disappointed competitors like Microsoft that had sought a tougher response. EU Competition Commissioner Joaquin Almunia said his mission is to protect competition to the benefit of consumers, not competitors.
To address these concerns, Google has finally accepted to guarantee that whenever it promotes its own specialized search services on its page, the services of rivals will also be displayed in a comparable way. In practice, this means that when Google promotes one of its own specialized search services, there will be 3 rival services also displayed prominently on the page in a way that is clearly visible to users.
In South Africa, talks between platinum producers and miners aimed at ending a crippling strike broke down with no future date set for further negotiations. The government-brokered talks ended as the parties were unable to reach a settlement. Anglo-American Platinum, Impala Platinum, and Lonmin said the union's demand of a minimum $1,125 monthly wage wasn't feasible. Some fear a police crackdown similar to one that claimed the lives of 34 miners during a mine strike in 2012. The firms claim the strike has already cost the South African economy $360 million. As 16 out of 17 miners involved in a recent mining accident have now been found dead, with one still missing, the tensions continue to rise. Swedish commercial vehicle maker Volvo will cut a total of 4,400 white-collar jobs in 2014 following declining profit in the fourth quarter. Volvo reported a net profit of $74.3 million, down from $121 million in 2012. The job cuts include a previously announced reduction of 2,000 consultants and employees. Orders posted large regional differences in the quarter, declining 23% in Europe, while they increased 67% in North America and 49% in Asia. The world's most storied beverage brand, Coca-Cola, is taking a giant step from the traditional soda ale into the kitchen. Coca-Cola is spending $1.25 billion to buy a 10% stake in Green Mountain, which will introduce a new home soda maker to go alongside its single-serve coffee makers. Coca-Cola's drink brands, including Coke, Fanta, Sprite, and Powerade, will be making appearances in the new machines. Time will tell whether the new homemade fizzies can compete with Scarlett Johansson's star appeal. And Sony Corp unexpectedly forecast a $1.1 billion annual loss and a reduction of an additional 5,000 jobs. The Tokyo-based company had earlier projected a $290 million profit. As part of a widening restructuring plan, Sony will sell its personal computer business and split its TV division into a separate, wholly owned unit. The world's number 3 TV maker has lost money for 10 straight years as it struggles to keep up with an increasingly mobile and internet-based world. In the wake of French President François Hollande's visit to Israel, Franco-Israeli trade is gradually picking up. The following report by Daniel Roth takes a closer look.
On November 19th, Francois Hollande visited Israel with a large delegation of French entrepreneurs. The stated objective was to double trade between the two countries, which amounts to just $3 billion. 3 months later, there may be encouraging signs.
What we have noticed in the Embassy of France is an acceleration of visits in both directions: business tours, discovery tours of Israel, and official visits. So I think it's a sign, a good sign, that will allow progressive increase to the level of our trade.
This is not an Israeli entry point into Europe. Right now, England, Germany, and Holland are the preferred destinations. For example, Israeli investment in French stocks amounted to just 107 million euro in late 2012. A good sign, though. Idomu, an Israeli startup specializing in custom video with 55 employees and with operations in 22 countries, has already connected with the French market, working with companies such as Canal Plus and Orange.
Demand for Israeli startups and Israeli innovations in the French market. In the last year or year and a half, it was completely increased. So,
for years, the French have been active in the Arab world and less so in Israel. At this point, though, the gap seems to be more cultural than political.
I think for me, the most important is the cultural and linguistic gap. In France, you have to work in French, with French people, even when people speak fairly good English. As well, the Israeli business world is very Anglo-Saxon, very American, very aggressive, some would say. On the other hand, the French proceed much slower, and in a measured way. The French like to intellectualize a process and prolong negotiations and discussions.
Israel has a sizable Francophone population and aims to penetrate the European market and asks creativity in doing so from French companies. The business potential between the two countries seems to be enormous, and the visit from the French president has already seemed to have positive effects.
We're joined now by I24 News editor Ruth Sinai for a discussion on immigration in the world economy. Thank you very much, Ruth Sinai, for joining us.
Sure, Benjamin.
So I understand today we're discussing immigration in aging societies.
Right. So the world is aging. People are living longer, and people are having less children.
Right.
Okay, so we've got this kind of imbalance, as it were.
Right.
Now, there's an organization in the States called the Pew Research Center, and they went to a whole bunch of countries and asked 22,000 people whether they were worried about getting old. And I don't know if you'll guess who was the least worried about getting old?
America?
Fair, very nice. Okay, so yes, America are the least worried. And the reason they're the least worried is that they're growing. In other words, they're aging slower, if you understand.
Right.
In other words, the population is growing. It's expected to grow by something like 90 million until the year 2050.
The birth rate is also slightly higher than
in
European
Europe
countries.
Because of immigrants. That's the point. The point is that America, as it's always been, it's always grown because of immigration.
Right.
And it's interesting, considering the opposition to immigration that there is in the United States.
Right.
And those who oppose immigration really do need to remember that is their only hope, because Americans are also fertility rates in the States from, say, from veteran Americans who are not, immigrants from recent decades, let's say, are also much lower. They're sort of European style more than they are third world style.
Right.
Now, in Europe, what's happening is the opposite. The fertility rate is low in most countries, and the immigration is very much on hold. I mean, it's being controlled very seriously.
Right.
And so, for instance, in Germany, if they wanted to have the same kind of population growth as in the U.S., they would need to be bringing in twice the number of immigrants that they bring in today. And in some of the other countries, like Spain, if I'm not mistaken, they would need to bring in 4 times as many.
Isn't Europe's saving grace, though, the fact that they have this European Union that is now connected to Eastern Europe, so that young people can come from there?
Yes.
Is that maybe its saving grace at this point?
But again, they're not staying. They're not putting into the social security system.
Right.
So that what's going to happen happen is that the number of people, what's called the dependency ratio, meaning the number of people who are not working and the number of people who are working and are contributing into the social security system is going to be in some European countries and certainly in Asian countries and Japan and so on, it's going to be the same number. So you're going to basically have the older people not having enough money in the social security system for pensions and allowances.
Okay.
And that's a very frightening prospect.
Indeed.
So, immigration, this is another example of where immigration really is, it can be a boon for many societies, even though a lot, it's kind of like a lot of these countries are seeing immigration now as a threat in terms of taking away jobs and perhaps being a burden on the welfare system.
Right,
but in the long run, there's no doubt that it serves
Presuming,
most societies.
of course, that you do invest in these new immigrants and allow them to invest in themselves.
Right, and in education and their descendants and so on.
Thank you so very much,
Thank you.
Sinai, I24 News editor. We're going to move on. Thank you very
you.
much. The following report takes us to a little village in northern Lebanon where a water-powered mill continues to attract customers. Let's see the next report for more detail.
Water-powered mills have been used for 2 millennia. In Akkar, northern Lebanon, this technology is still in use, where Ismail Khaled Matar continues the family business.
This mill has no date. They say it's been here since Ottoman times or even longer. I inherited it from my father, and my father inherited it from my grandfather, and will pass it down to my son, God willing.
Here they are dedicated to the old-style techniques, but old style shouldn't be confused with being outmoded. Since the mill is hydro-powered, they don't need to worry about power cuts, a regular occurrence in these parts, or fuel price hikes. The only concern they have is that the stream that powers the mill remains rolling.
The stone works thanks to water. Whether there's electricity or not, we don't care. If the price of gas or diesel increases, we have nothing to do with it. The stone works with water. If it doesn't rain and the river doesn't flow, there's no mill.
Matar believes the mill produces healthier flour than the product of modern methods, and people from across the country, perhaps in agreement, visit the mill as they have for generations.
This was an institution. When people used to gather here, they spent the winter here, 4 or 5 months, to make corn flour. Everyone spent a day here, or 2 or 3 days, sleeping here, to have a turn.
Other mills are still up and running in the region, but there aren't many people like Matar who make their main living from this traditional practice.
And now we're going to be looking at the media of the world in Media Watch with Daniel Roth. So, Daniel Roth, what do you have for us in terms of the media?
How's it going?
Good, good.
Well, the Daily Mirror had this really tragic, heartbreaking story, the story of a man who's a convicted poacher, elephant poacher, who's himself killed 70 elephants for the ivory.
Unbelievable.
And he's explaining that on the black market you can get 80 pounds, so almost $200 a kilogram, a kilo for 80 or for 160. Sure. You can get for 9,600 pounds is for a whole elephant. Mm-hmm. It's a huge business. You can get nearly $5,000 on the black market in China for this stuff, and it's just this tragic story that is really decimating the elephant population in Africa. In the last 30 years, in Kenya alone, it's gone from 170,000 to 30,000 elephants. And they expect that they'll be extinct if this keeps on going. Sure. So there's a major summit in London happening this week on illegal wildlife killing, which is a huge deal in the world. And the International Fund for Animal Welfare is asking people to turn in their ivory items that they may have, so that it can stop being something that people use in the world. Right. And so the less it is in people's households and on the market,
the less people see it and the less people will want it, so to speak.
Right, exactly. So that's what they're asking. And if you go to the Daily Mirror, it's this piece kind of putting a light on this tragic story.
It seems like a more positive way of approaching the issue rather than saying I'm going to fine it and whoever is found having this is going to go to jail.
Right.
Although that should probably also be applied.
Yeah, and it does happen that poachers are sent to jail. Right. The Wall Street Journal had this other piece yesterday. CVS, major second biggest pharmacy in the U.S., announced they're going to cut out all tobacco sales.
Fantastic.
This is huge. It's going to affect the tobacco market, which in 2013 shrunk by 4%. And it may be that CVS is getting ahead of this, this sort of trend where higher taxes, less smokers, it's all coming to an end, it seems like. And CVS is actually stepping out in front, saying we're going to take a $2 billion revenue hit annually in order to stop selling tobacco.
Speaking of hits, I guess in 2015 they're going to be selling weed, right?
Yes, it's entirely possible that they're getting the shelves cleared off.
Okay, on that funny note, thank you very much for joining us today. Keep on watching us. We're going to be here again next week. And send us your feedback on our website and via Twitter. Thank you very much.